Starting. All right, let's see. Let's see. Okay, let's see. How do we? All right, here we're just gonna do some charting. Cheers. Let's get set up. Let's see, how do we want this to be? All right, so obviously it's election week, and what else do we have this week? All right, and Thursday is FOMC, so going to be a wild week. Uh, Definitely going to primarily sit on the sidelines, and so I wasn't even really planning on looking at charts, except got a few requests in the Discord. So I was randomly looking through some on Saturday while I was watching the Penn State game. And overall, I'm seeing weakness, especially in tech going into the election, which I think is interesting. But yeah, here, let me see. How do I? Man, I really need like a YouTube Live 101 video because I don't even know how to see anything here. How do I get access to the chat? Okay, so right off the bat, looking at NQ here, kind of posted what I think might happen. Obviously, it's not going to play out exactly like that, but essentially, what I was looking at is that to me, this looks like what we're doing is we're building a market maker sell model, and just kind of give you an idea. Oops, wrong way. Sorry. So what I'm expecting, right, is we slowly like grinding up here. What we ended up doing on from Wednesday to Thursday is we created this imbalance, and then from Wednesday to Friday, we created this daily fair value gap. And so, and you can see right now, actually, futures for Asia are up. So it made sense to come makes sense to come up to at least test this fair value gap. You could even see here there's an hourly fair value gap that it tested. Right. So are we gonna just test and reject? Very possible here. For now, especially like I do think there's just gonna be a lot of chop tomorrow, and even Tuesday. Who knows when we're actually gonna get the election results? So, but what I think is interesting is you can see I drew these fibs from the top to the local bottom here. Let me get this out of the way. And so I think it's interesting that the golden pocket ends up being right at this imbalance here. So, and that would align with this sell model that I think is building. So that's something that I'll be looking out for. The only so I ended up swinging. I have um with some time, not a lot of time, but with some time, I ended up swinging Apple puts and SoFi calls because I liked how SoFi was holding up despite this weakness. And then with Apple, let's actually go to the Apple chart. It just looks weak to me. So you can see we took out these relative equal highs, which were my target. And then ever since we sold off. And obviously there's quite a few imbalances here, so that's the risk, right? So if the market runs a little bit going into the election, or maybe runs a little bit after the rate hike decision, which by the way, I saw that there's 100% chance of a 25 basis point cut, which I think is very interesting. I don't know how that makes any sense because you could see how much the yields are going up despite the last cut, and the last cut felt political. You could argue that it was political, but then obviously the election's over by Thursday, so the fact that the market's pricing in 100% chance of a cut is pretty interesting to me, and I wonder if that's going to be a big disappointment at all. But can only speculate. So, anyways, we have these imbalances that were created along the way, which might need to get re-explored. So that's the risk of me holding these shorts on Apple. But like I've been saying for a while, I think macro or Apple is in macro distribution. I think you're better off going short if the opportunity presents itself than going long. But it does feel like we're heading down towards this gap here, and like if we play around with some of these fibs. Let's just see what we're looking at here. All right, so could bounce at this 707 here, which would kind of stink for my shorts. I could roll, obviously. And then we have it bouncing at the 382. So, dang, I might need to roll. So, what we could see on Apple is maybe, well, before I get going into the paths, let me look at different time frames. And let me just clear all drawings. I usually like to just start fresh. Well, that does look pretty toppy, doesn't it, huh? So that's interesting. I'll tell you what I was targeting though with the shorts too in a moment, but interesting. Okay, so just looking at the monthly here, what you could see is there is, well, it was tested and it didn't really get a strong reaction off of it, which is interesting. Sorry, this is why I like just removing all drawings and kind of starting from fresh every once in a while because it kind of gives you a new perspective. So, sorry, let me just fix this camera a little bit. Um, what I'm looking at here is that typically, like, so you have a fair value gap, which is like, oh, wait. Yeah, actually, sorry. This would be the fair value gap. So I wonder if there's a 3 month. No. Okay. All right. So, you obviously also had one there that it bounced off of, but you would have expected a stronger bounce off of that monthly fair value gap if you drew it from here to here. And instead, it just stalled out at these highs. You could argue that now there's relative equal highs on the monthly, which is interesting. So something to pay attention to. What's that at 237.52 ish? Okay. All right. So monthly, this is why I know like a lot of ICT traders are pretty much all don't use volume, but what I like to see is the story that volume is telling, and so you can see that volume isn't really supporting these latest moves. Like if you compare it to volume over here, right? So volume is kind of coming to an end, and again, let me just show you. Oops, let me save what I have here, and I'll come back to this chart. But this is what I have been tracking. Me get rid of this path, but you get the idea here, right? Is that you know we're building, we're in this phase C, I believe, on the weekly of this Wyckoff distribution schematic. So that's why I have this idea that I'd much rather look for a short opportunity on Apple than a long opportunity, despite the fact that the market has been in a clear uptrend, especially all year. So just something that I have been watching. And then, so, all right, so we have that, right? And then let's now go back to, sorry, I don't pay for TradingView. I should. Let's go back into here. So if we're looking at the monthly, we're looking for fair value gaps and, imbalances, just trying to get an idea of where we think we can head to. See, so yeah, see how, so this is interesting. So weekly imbalances, in my opinion, tend to get explored. Um, and so you have an imbalance here. You have an imbalance here. You have, yeah. So I'd like to see more price discovery in this region, which feels crazy to say based off of where we currently are, right? But I think that there's a high probability of that happening over the next maybe 6 months, three to 6 months. Let's see. Um, All right. So anything else that we want to? So this is from the Japan news. All right, so we could see like the more macro fibs how they line up based off of this bottom here in January of 2023 to the recent top. Um, hmm. These relative equal highs are bothering me though. Um, Relative equal highs or relative equal lows tend to act like magnets and get re-explored. So yeah, I don't know. But I am liking the short side, but sorry, I'm just like really trying to make sure that analyze it to the best of my ability right here. So, oh, what I wanted to see is if any of these imbalances line up with a fib on a little bit more micro. Yeah, so you could see here, if you really zoom in, what I've noticed is that the 707 tends to be a spot that the algorithm likes to bounce at or at least explore. So once the 382 gets taken out, that's usually the area where I'm looking to take a position or just to see how we react there. And if you notice, this 707 takes us right to this imbalance here. So, you know, breaking 200 would be pretty crazy, but that's something that I'd be looking out for, especially if the overall market sees weakness after this election over the next few months. That's something that I would target personally. And so let's now look for this week, right? So for this week, what my expectations would be. All right, so we could say, let me just mark this off. These are incorrect. Okay, well, I don't usually really use these, but just kind of look at it this way. All right, so wait, is that right? Yeah. So be interesting if this kind of like what might happen. Or let's even before we do that, let's see. So we're on the daily, right? And we could see all these imbalances. Let's just see how the fibs line up to these. Yeah, so they might want to try to get it back up into the discount range above this 0.5. Um, Sorry, someone was just posting something about GME in my Discord, so I was just taking a look. All right, and then so maybe we bounce here, right? Because we took out this liquidity here. Maybe we bounce a little bit here. We could either bounce and come back down from the 382, or we can make it back up to this discount range and then maybe reject the golden pocket. Um, the interesting is if thing is if we make it all the way back up to the 786, then um, that would reject the previous weekly body high, and then that would also fill all of these imbalances that we left here. So that could definitely be interesting. I might end up, let's see how we open on Monday, but I might end up rolling my put position. Yeah, so on Apple. So what I'm ultimately targeting on Apple, what I personally, obviously being already in a short position. See, there's like Apple just, um, yeah, Apple just has so many imbalances. And it's also funny. So it's gonna be interesting to see how the Warren Buffett news that dropped over the weekend plays out for Apple on Monday because Buffett just sold a ton of more shares of Apple. And in my opinion, rightfully so. Apple hasn't innovated in a while. Um, wow, I should, just for your sake, so you guys don't have to keep seeing those advertisements, I should just pay for TradingView. Um, but yeah, so all right, so Apple. So what I'm targeting, geez, I just every time I look at this chart, I see another. Okay. Um, I told the Discord I want to see like the 216 level. I would love to see, this is sell side liquidity here. Would love to see sell side get tested, right? Because the market's either, there's four reasons why the market moves. One is to hunt liquidity, two is to generate liquidity, three is to get back to equilibrium, and four is blanking on it, but pretty much to test imbalances, right? So any of these imbalances or fair value gaps. So I would like to see. So it already tested this sell side here. I'd like to see it test this sell side here. This is a bigger one for me. This 214. That's what I was targeting. I think I have 215 puts for November 15th, November OPEX. But if it really gets going, I would look to even see if these levels start getting tested. So this 382 would be interesting around 206. So that's what I would be looking for. And then obviously in the discount range, which would be amazing for my position. But you have this sell side down here, which is the big one, right? This is from, I believe that's from the Japan. Yeah, that's the major sell side level. So break 200, and that's where we're going. So that's what I'm going to be looking out for. I'm going to look for bounce. If it bounces, I'm going to roll. But I still feel confident in this short if you give yourself enough time. Obviously, not financial advice, but just how I'm reading this chart. The next one that I wanted to look at, I'm primarily focused on tech right now. Just because out of all the tickers that I've been looking at over the weekend, while just laying on the couch watching football, have been some of the tech names, and they just like overall have been showing weakness. If you watched my video from weeks ago, I drew this path out on Google, and it's been pretty spot on. So I figured we were going to take out this buy side level here when we were down here. We did, and then we came back down. I thought we were going to come down a little bit further to test this imbalance. Um, we didn't, which is fine. But then, but we pretty much did. So there was this imbalance here that it bounced off of. So I probably just drew my path a little bit too low. And then I figured once we took this buy side level out, it would want to go out after this buy side level. So there's this one, and then there's also this one up here. Now, I'm a little surprised, to be honest, that it didn't sweep that level, and instead it just filled this daily gap. Um, which is fine. It's making me think that it's maybe either a little bit weaker than I initially thought it was going to be, or if again, like if we see Apple bounce too, we might bounce. And this weekly fair value gap seems irrelevant now. We might come back up to sweep this area, and if we do, I will look to grab a short there, because I do think that this one, once it gets going, I think it will fill these gaps below. So we do same type of analysis. Man, this is a mess. I'm like hesitant to start over on this one just because I have my path and I just kind of like to see how I do with it. Um, but same kind of idea as Apple. Like volume has supported this move a little bit up here, and then like this last move, volume is starting to die down a bit. So I do think that's interesting on the monthly chart. And then let's see if we see. All right, so you can see here that's interesting. So we had a monthly fair value gap here that was tested, and that's what we bounced off of here. So it will be from here to here. Um, this was also a monthly imbalance that got filled. We have another monthly. Oh, that's interesting. All right, so we have a monthly imbalance here. And then let's see, how are we looking on the weekly? Yeah, that weekly is what I was originally looking at earlier. Looks kind of weak, high volume, um, possible footprint candle. Let's see what comes of this. I think if anything could have maybe a slight push down, and then we maybe get enough volume to take out that buy side level and sweep it before moving down. So I think this one's like very close and should be high on the watch list, but not confident in the short just yet. I want to give it a little bit more time and wait for confirmation. So, but I think that this one could pay pretty nicely once it gets going. Man, I should write down where. Yeah, so this one, let me just write this as monthly imbalance. I also just noticed. All right, so I am cut off in this video. Let me see. Is that okay? Yeah, yeah, there we go. Much better. Okay, sorry. Jumping back into the charts. All right. Okay, so Google monthly. Sorry, I was just looking at my preview. Yeah, Google monthly, like, man, I just really want us to take out this level up here. Okay, so let's do Microsoft because Microsoft 2 to me looks like a sell model. Same thing, volume decreasing on the monthly. You have this monthly fair value gap that was tested to push it up, tested again. But that second test wasn't nearly as strong. And I think that it starts coming down. So let's see. Oh, I would love to see this golden pocket test. And that's actually, look at that. It's another fair value gap. This might be one of my more favorite ones to keep an eye on. Oh, well, let me actually. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Okay, and then. All right, so looking at the monthly. Yeah, so let's look at the weekly, like, and start the daily. Yeah, no, weekly. Like this, like, pattern traders will say that this is a crystal clear head and shoulders. Right, where this looks pretty bearish to me. Especially since the second bounce of the monthly fair value gap went down into the discount range and it still wasn't as strong to get back up to these all-time highs. You also had this footprint, like if you look at here, this kind of signaled that this volume signaled that something was coming. You can see this volume far exceeds this consolidation volume that we saw here, so something looks like it's coming. Sorry, it's bothering me that they're different colors. So what I would ultimately like to see, and again, let me just make sure there's nothing else to look at from. Okay. Yeah, you also have this. This is a weekly imbalance. I'll write that down. All right, so where are we heading, right? Overall, feel pretty confident this is going down. Would love to see us over the coming weeks test this second fair value gap and this golden pocket in 362 area. But even then, like it feels like it could go even lower. Um, just curious on what this more macro fib is going to tell us. So if we drop from these lows back here in October 2022, yeah, I like this point 0.5 getting tested. I like the idea that we are going to head to the 316 area with time. You can see like this will probably cat like obviously a lot of activity here. We have that weekly imbalance that would bring it down into the discount range. So yeah, I like this. All right, so what's gonna happen in the immediate future? Let's see. All right, so we had this earnings. I think this was the earnings gap. Yeah. All right, so we have this gap here on the daily, which a lot of people will probably be trying to play, thinking that it's going to fill that gap, especially after taking out sell side here. We do have sell side here though. So would be interesting to see if it has enough juice to get back up and start trying to fill this gap. Or what might happen is kind of like let's sweep this area, maybe test that fair value gap, and then try to start filling this gap. But overall, again, I do think that we see downside. Um, yeah, I like the short. I think what I would rather do is just wait to see if the short presents itself. I wouldn't short here, especially after taking out sell side. This sell side level. What you can see here is there's also an imbalance down here. So could come into that 50%, that discount range of that imbalance, and then bounce off of the fair value gap and then take off a little bit. So this is one that I like to short. I just want to get confirmation first. I want to see if we start to try to close that gap before downside because I'm leaning towards us not re-exploring these areas for a little while. Like I think that overall for the market personally, I think overall the market um, is nearing the top, and it doesn't really matter who wins the election. Well, it obviously matters, but from a market standpoint, I don't know if it matters too much. I think whatever's going to happen is already set in motion and it's going to happen and it could get painful for a little while. But I think that we could see the final phase of this blow off top if the top isn't in already. And then overall, we see weakness, especially in tech. Will be interesting too. I'm sure you all saw that Nvidia made it into the Dow, and so will Nvidia continue? I think it was up like almost 3% in after hours on Friday. Will that continue, and will that just lift everything up? Between the tickers that we just looked at, Apple, Microsoft, Google, will that just lift everything up? And kind of like Microsoft's the only one where I was like, maybe they will tease the gap a little bit, but then take out that other sell side level and then push up. But all the others, it looks like that it could push up sooner rather than later. And then that could give us a possible short opportunity. But again, we just want to see how it reacts to these levels. We want confirmation. And so if that happens, let's just look to see. Let me do. So if we drop from here, yeah, maybe get back into like this 428 area. And let's just see how it reacts there. So, um, the only other one. So this one I've been on the fence with. I have commons. I've had them for a while. This was my original target. This pink box. I'm just on the fence on what I want to do with my commons position. I haven't sold anything yet, but I'm thinking that I should start. But then when I look at like, so curious if anyone has any thoughts, but if I look at the 3 month, 3 months still looks pretty solid to me, right? So we had volume ramping up on this push up. We had a low volume push down. And then now what I would like to see is start seeing volume ramp back up again. And if it does, this thing could get pretty juicy. That's why I've been holding on to commons. And that's why I feel like trading commons is so underrated. Everyone these days, the gambling culture, everyone's into options, which is fine too. But obviously, with options, you could lose a lot of money if you especially if you don't know what you're doing. Commons are just like so much less stressful, and I have time to make a decision. Do I want to cut here? Like I've been thinking about this for weeks now, like trying to figure out what to do. And the more I look at this chart, especially the larger time frames, I'm like, yeah, I think I still believe in my idea that we might take out some of these levels higher. So yeah, so this is me. Thanks for listening. If anyone listens, probably not. I haven't had an opportunity to really grow a following yet, but I would like to, and I would like to learn to see what you all are interested in learning about, what you're looking for from a content standpoint, but really just trying to get comfortable hanging out on YouTube and putting myself out there. It's pretty intimidating to be honest, but it seems fun. That's why I had to drink some liquid encouragement. But yeah, looking forward, I'll look at more tickers after the election. I think right now I'm just kind of we have the election, we have FOMC. It's going to be a wild week. I'm not really planning on trading much besides managing my swing trades that like I mentioned I have the Apple, but it's a very small position. I'd rather go cash heavy into this week, and then hopefully after this week there will be plenty of opportunities that present themselves. So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I hope everyone has a great week. Be careful out there, and yeah, thank you.